Hello, friends. Today we are going to start a new Magic Treehouse book. It is called Afternoon on the Amazon. Oh, I wonder what Jack and Annie are going to be getting into this time. Okay. Chapter 1. Where's Peanut? Hurry, Jack, shouted Annie. Annie ran into the Frog Creek woods. Jack followed her. It's still here, Annie called. Jack caught up with Annie. She stood beside a tall oak tree. Jack looked up. The magic treehouse was shining in the afternoon sunlight. We're coming, Peanut, Annie called. She grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Jack followed. They climbed and climbed. Finally, they climbed into the treehouse. Peanut, said Annie. Jack took off his backpack. He looked around. Sunlight slanted across a stack of books. Books about ninjas, pirates, mummies, knights, and dinosaurs. The letter M shimmered on the wooden floor. M for Morgan Le Fay. I don't think Peanut's. I wonder where she is, said Annie. How do you know Peanut's a she? Asked Jack. I just know it, said Annie. Oh, brother, said Jack. Squeak! Annie laughed. Look, Jack! A small pink sock was moving across the floor. Yesterday, Annie had turned her sock into a bed for Peanut. Annie picked up the tiny lump. Squeak! Annie and Jack are being so kind to Peanut. A brown and white mouse peeked out of the sock. She looked from Annie to Jack with her big eyes. Jack laughed. Hi, Peanut, he said. Will you help us again today? Asked Annie. In old Japan, Peanut had helped them when they'd gotten lost. We have to find 3 more things for Morgan, said Annie. Jack pushed his glasses into place. First, we have to find a clue that tells us where to begin, he said. Guess what, said Annie. What, said Jack. We don't have to look very far. She pointed at a corner of the treehouse. In the shadows was an open book. Chapter 2. Big Bugs. Wow, said Jack, picking up the book. The ninja book was opened yesterday. Now this one. Who opened them? Jack closed the book and looked at the cover. It showed a picture of a green forest. The trees were very tall and close together. On the cover were the words, the rainforest. Oh, wow, said Jack. Oh, no, said Annie. What's wrong, said Jack. I learned about the rainforest in school, said Annie. It's filled with big bugs and spiders. I know, said Jack. Half of them have never even been named. It's creepy, said Annie. It's neat, said Jack. He wanted to take lots of notes in the rainforest. Maybe he could even name some unknown bugs. Neat? Yuck, said Annie. She shivered. I don't get it, said Jack. You weren't afraid of dinosaurs. So? You weren't afraid of the castle guards or the mummy's ghost. So? You weren't afraid of pirates or ninjas. So? You're not afraid of really scary things, but you're afraid of little bugs and spiders? That doesn't make sense. So? Jack sighed. Listen, he said. We have to go there to help Morgan. That's why the book was left open. I know that, said Annie, frowning. Plus, the rainforests are being cut down, said Jack. Don't you want to see one before it's too late? And he took a deep breath and slowly nodded. Okay then, let's go, said Jack. He opened the book again. He pointed to a picture that showed blue sky, green leaves, and bright flowers. I wish we could go there, he said. The wind began to blow. Squeak! Stay here, Peanut, said Annie as she put the mouse in her pocket. The wind picked up. The treehouse started to spin. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. The wind was whistling now. The treehouse was spinning faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. Wild sounds broke the silence. Screech, buzz, chirp, chirp. Chapter 3. Yikes! Jack opened his eyes. The air was hot and steamy. It looks like we landed in some bushes, said Annie. She was peeking out of the treehouse window. Peanut was peeking out of Annie's pocket. Jack peeked out of the treehouse, too. They had landed in a sea of shiny green leaves. Outside there were flowers, bright butterflies, and birds, just as in the book. That's strange, said Jack. I wonder why we didn't land in a tree, the way we always do. I don't know, said Annie, but let's hurry and find the thing for Morgan, so we can get back home before we meet any big bugs. Wait, this seems really weird, said Jack. I don't understand why we landed in bushes. I better read about this. Oh, come on, said Annie. We don't even need the ladder. We can just climb out the window. Annie put Peanut in her pocket. She stuck one leg out the window. Wait, said Jack, grabbed Annie's other leg. He read, "The rainforest is in 3 layers, thick treetops, often over 150 feet in the air, making up the top layer. This is called the forest canopy. Below the canopy is the understory, then the forest floor." Get back in here, cried Jack. We're probably more than 150 feet above the ground, in the forest canopy. Oh no. If Jack hadn't stopped her, she probably would have fallen and hurt herself. What animals do you see in these pictures? I see a butterfly, a bird. Let's see, this is a spider, I believe, or an ant. You guys see anything else? Yikes, said Annie. She slipped back into the treehouse. We have to use the ladder, said Jack. He got on his hands and knees. He moved leaves away from the hole in the floor. He looked down. The ladder seemed to fall between branches of a giant tree, but Jack couldn't see beyond that. I can't tell what's down there, he said. Be careful. Jack put the rainforest book back in his backpack. Then he stepped onto the rope ladder. He started down. Annie followed with Peanut in her pocket. Jack pushed through the leaves. He came to the understory below the canopy. He looked down at the forest floor. It was very far away. Oh man, whispered Jack. This world was completely different from the one above the treetops. Now that they were out of the sun, it was cooler. It was also damp and very quiet. Jack shivered. It was the spookiest place he had ever seen. Chapter 4. Millions of them. Jack didn't move. He kept staring down at the forest floor. What's wrong? Annie called from above. Jack didn't answer. You don't see any giant spiders, do you? Annie said. Well, no. Jack took a deep breath. We have to keep going, he thought. We have to find the special thing for Morgan. No spiders, nothing scary, Jack called, and he started down the ladder again. Jack and Annie climbed down through the understory. Finally, they stepped onto the forest floor. Only a few rays of light slanted through the gloom. The trees were very, very tall and very wide. Vines and moss were hanging everywhere. The ground was covered with dead leaves. Before we do anything, I'd better check the book, said Jack. He pulled out the rainforest book. He found a picture of the dark world under the treetops. He read, "In the rainforest, many living creatures blend in with their surroundings. This is called camouflage." Oh man, said Jack. He closed the book and looked around. There are tons of creatures down here. We just can't see them. Really? Whispered Annie. She and Jack peered around at the quiet forest. Jack felt unseen eyes watching them. Let's hurry and find the special thing, whispered Annie. How will we know when we find it? Jack said. I think we'll just know, said Annie. She headed off through the gloom. Jack followed. They crept between the huge trees and past hanging vines. Annie stopped. Wait, what's that? What's what? Listen, the weird sound. Jack listened. He heard a crackling sound. It sounded like a person walking over leaves. Jack looked around. He didn't see anyone, but the sound got louder. Was it an animal? A giant bug? One that had never been named? Just then the silent forest came alive. Birds took off into the air. Frogs hopped over the leaves. Lizards ran up the tree trunks. The weird noise grew louder and louder. Maybe the book explains it, said Jack. He opened the book. He found a picture of different animals running together. He read, when animals hear a crackling sound, they flee in panic. The sound means that 30 million flesh-eating army ants are marching through the dead leaves. It's army ants, cried Jack. Millions of them. Where? Cried Annie. Jack and Annie looked around wildly. There, Annie pointed. It is really hard to see the army of ants, but do your best to look for them. What other animals do you see? I see a frog, a spider, a monkey, a sloth, a bird, and a snake. Army ants, millions and millions of them, were marching over the leaves. Run to the treehouse, cried Annie. Where is it? Said Jack, whirling around. All the trees looked the same. Where was the rope ladder? Just run, cried Annie. Jack and Annie took off. They ran over the dead leaves. They ran between wide tree trunks. They ran past the hanging vines and mosses. They climbed over thick roots. Jack saw a clearing ahead. It was filled with sunlight. That way, he cried. Jack and Annie hurried toward the light. They pushed their way through the bushes. They burst onto the bank of a river. They stared at the slow-moving brown water. Do you think the ants will come this way? Annie said, panting. I don't know, said Jack, but if we wade a few feet into the river, we're safe. Ants won't go into the water. Come on. Look, said Annie. She pointed to a big log rocking at the edge of the river. The inside of the log was dug out. It looks like a canoe, said Jack. He listened to the crackling sound in the distance. Let's get in it, quick. Jack shoved the book into his backpack. Then he and Annie carefully climbed into the dugout log. Annie leaned out of it. She pushed away from the bank with her hands. Wait, said Jack. We don't have paddles. Oops, said Annie. The canoe started moving slowly down the muddy river. Chapter 5. Pretty Fish. Squeak! Annie patted the little mouse in her pocket. It's okay, Peanut. The ants can't get us in the river. We're safe, she said. Maybe safer than the ants, said Jack. But where is this canoe going? Jack and Annie stared at the river. Branches spread over the water. Vines and mosses hung down from them. We better look this up, said Jack. He pulled the rainforest book out of his backpack and flipped through it. Soon he found a picture of a river. He read, the Amazon River stretches over 4,000 miles from the mountains of Peru across Brazil to the Atlantic Ocean. The river basin contains over half of the rainforest in the world. Jack looked at Annie. We're on the Amazon River, he said. It's more than 4,000 miles long. Wow, Annie whispered. She looked at the river. She trailed her hand through the water. I have to make some notes, Jack said. He pulled his notebook out of his pack. He wrote, the Amazon rainforest is... Jack, look at those pretty fish with the teeth, said Annie. What? Jack glanced up from his writing. Annie was pointing at some blue fish swimming near the boat. The fish had red bellies and razor-sharp teeth. "Watch it!" cried Jack. "Those aren't pretty fish. They're piranhas. They'll eat anything, even people." "Yikes!" whispered Annie. "We better get back on shore," said Jack, putting the books in his backpack. "How?" said Annie. "We can't go in the water now, and we don't have any paddles." Jack tried to stay calm. "We need a plan," he said. Jack stared at the river. The canoe would soon float under some vines. "I'll grab a vine," said Jack, "and pull us to shore." "Good idea," said Annie. As they glided under the branches, Jack stood up. The canoe rocked. He nearly fell out. "Balance the canoe," said Jack. Annie leaned to one side. Jack reached. He missed. The canoe floated under more branches. Jack reached for another thick vine. He grabbed it. It was cold and scaly. It wiggled and jerked. What do you think he grabbed? Ah! Jack screamed and fell back into the canoe. The vine was alive. It was a long green snake. The snake fell from the tree. It splashed into the water and swam away. "Oh, man," said Jack. He and Annie stared in horror at each other. "What now?" said Annie, making a face. "Well," Jack looked at the river. There were no vines up ahead, but there was a big branch floating on the water. "Grab that branch near you," said Jack. "Maybe we can use it for a paddle." The canoe floated closer to the branch. Annie reached for it. Suddenly, the branch rose into the air. It was a crocodile. "Help!" screamed Annie, and she fell back into the canoe. The crocodile opened and closed its huge long jaws. Then it moved past the canoe and swam up the river. "Oh, man," whispered Jack. A screeching sound split the air. Jack and Annie jumped. "Help!" said Jack. He expected to see another terrible creature, but all he saw was a small brown monkey hanging by its tail from a tree. And now we are at chapter 6, so we will pick up with that tomorrow. Bye, friends.